It's now 7 p.m. on February 21st, 2017. I'd like to call the Selectmen's meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is anyone here for public forum, limited to 5 minutes per topic? Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. The next would be the Board of Selectmen minutes from February 7th, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 7th, 2017 Board of Selectmen's meeting as amended.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And I oppose. Abstention.
Right here also.
And me and 3 yes and 2 abstentions. Thank you. The next would be the agenda items, would be FY18 budget presentation. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you can just give me a minute to set up, I'd
Certainly.
appreciate it. Can you grab that? You probably want to move to the side. That's great. Let that warm up a little bit. Feel like we just did this.
Flies, huh?
It certainly does. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is obviously the FY18 preliminary budget presentation. This is actually my 10th budget presentation this year, so that's an interesting time frame here. The budget's balanced. That's the good news. We are balanced in large part due to the significant new growth that we received and certified in the fall. However, our expenses are exceeding our revenues, which means that we could have a future issue down the line. What is nice about this budget is we typically struggle at this time of year to present a budget that's close to being balanced. It's generally some sort of deficit we're dealing with at this point in time, up to $150,000. Now we're balanced and looking forward to next year and the following year. So we've kind of shifted a little bit to a much more sustainable budget, but I'm still concerned long-term that we have to control our expenses. Otherwise, we will hit a structural deficit, which will require cuts and so forth. So, I mentioned that before we get started, just to put everybody on the same page. Again, preliminary overview. The budget is $31,390,056, an increase of $499,000 or 1.62% over FY17 final budget. The revenue is actually increasing $625,000. $575,000 of that is 2.5% plus new growth. We're budgeting $150,000 in new growth this year. Our expenses, however, are increasing $800,000 net of debt payments. So you can see a future structural deficit that's occurring right there. We have a balanced budget. However, our expenses are growing faster than our revenues. Any surplus revenues or reductions in costs will all go to pay off debt, which will lower our recurring expenses. That's important. If we are able to get a lower healthcare number or a lower property casualty number or any of the unknowns at this point in time, in addition, if we get additional new growth, that will all go towards paying off debt, which will. You okay? which will help us in FY19 and FY20. The school appropriation is going up $350,000. We're getting much closer to being structurally balanced within the school department. Their class sizes are good at this point in time. We are currently 1.3 million over net school spending required. That's a pretty good number. I think next year it's even better. And how we get that number is the state's contributing $28,000 in Chapter 70 money this year. We're giving the school department $350,000. Next year, the state contributes $28,000, and we'll continue to contribute $300,000 to $350,000. That's how that net school spending grows over time. Just a couple years ago, that number was down to below $1 million, down to $750,000. So within a 3-year plus period of time, we've increased it to $1.3 million, which is a positive. This is the first year we've eliminated free cash from our revenues. Over the last 9 years, we've eliminated $575,000 in free cash from our budget. That's a significant achievement. When I started 10 years ago, there was $575,000, and through the recession, we continued to chunk away at that number, sometimes keeping it level funded, but typically waiting to fall town meeting and chunking off $50,000 to $100,000 and eventually getting it down to zero this last fall town meeting. So our challenge is to continue to keep the town's expenses at or below the revenue we bring in. No different than your personal finances. I'm sure you all try to live below your means and save the additional revenue if you can. Healthcare costs are increasing this year 13.3%. That's from Maya. That's what they told us. That's with no plan design changes. It's a potential $400,000 increase in health insurance. I'm working with the Insurance Advisory Committee to adopt a deductible plan. That will lower our premiums probably down to maybe 5 or 6%. So it's a significant change, but we have to get the unions ultimately to agree to make this plan design change. It makes a lot of sense for us as well as for the employees, because not only will our premiums go down to 5%, the employees' premiums will go down to the same level. We're looking to fund a police station at the former Blue Jay site. At the fall town meeting, the town appropriated $500,000 for OPM services as well as designer services. The construction costs are approximately $7 million. That comes from the feasibility study. The OPM is on board. The designer is Tecton Architects, and we are finalizing a design contract with them as we speak. So that'll be done within the next week or so. What else have we done? We've eliminated the tree warden account and have incorporated that into the highway department. Matt Stencil has agreed to be our new tree warden. He went to college in the the forestry program at UMass. He was arborist. In the past, he was a certified arborist. He's lost that designation. He's going to get it again. Our current tree warden is not a certified arborist, Joe Camara. He did a great job for the town, but there's obviously a cost savings, and we're gonna do it. And it's good because Matt Stencil's obviously here doing highway work, and he's more accessible and available than the previous tree warden. But I do want to thank Joe Camara for the great job he did for the town over the number of years he served us. We completed a compensation study, which I've informed the board through updates. A few department heads were slightly underpaid. I've increased 6 department heads between $2,200 and $4,500. There were still seven or so department heads that weren't underpaid or were slightly or overpaid. So, I felt it important to compensate those employees that were underpaid. We are also purchasing a Code Red early notification system. This will allow us to notify residents in the town when we have an emergency. In the past, I used to utilize the Sheriff's Department. They had a reverse 911 program. Very difficult to locate the residents within that reverse 911. I believe that service is going away, so many municipalities are now going with an early notification system like Code Red. I think Millbury has Code Red, and other municipalities are going with Code Red. So the cost of that is $4,500 a year. Very rarely do we have an emergency type situation where we've utilized the reverse 911. The two incidents I can think of over the last 10 years were E. coli outbreaks within the water system districts, where we had to target that district, whether it be Wilkes or Manchog, and then send out a reverse 911 call to them to say, don't drink the water, boil the water, whatever the orders were at that point in time. But, there are other ways or ways to use this service that much greater than the reverse 911. We're looking to purchase additional land at Pigeon Hill Cemetery. The cost is $22,000 to purchase an acre of land to expand the cemetery and possibly locate a communications tower at the top of that cemetery. If you know, it's off Mendon Road, Pigeon Hill Cemetery. It's at a high point in town that covers that area. I'm in discussions with George Kausick, who owns the land, and talking about purchasing that land. Town council's involved, developing a purchase and sale agreement pending town meeting authorization. So if town meeting authorizes this, then we will go ahead and purchase this land for future cemetery sites as well as a possible communications tower at this location. Overall budget changes, departmental changes, that's cost of living adjustments, slight changes. I've added 2 positions, a sergeant's position over in the police department, which had been frozen since 2009, the last 8 years. The chief is notifying employees that officers that want to participate in that process. I'm also hiring a firefighter, an additional duty crew member. We were down to the chief and Robin Dresser. Renee Roy was is still out on long-term workers' comp. Hopefully she comes back at some point in time, but it was just too much work for the chief and Robin to do. So I've offered Tom Briggs that position, and hopefully that works out. Employee benefits increases, almost $500,000. Now, that includes property casualty. Right now, we don't have that actual number. I've budgeted, I think it's 13% increase, give or take, because I was told that our workers' comp experience is high. So our experience is high, therefore our rate may go up more than typical. It also includes our health care costs. I budgeted 16%. That's 13.3 plus additional people enrolled in the open enrollment period last May. After the budget was done, after town meeting was held, we had an additional 15 or so people. That number continues to grow. And then we've cut $100,000 in debt service. But, I guess I'll get more into the healthcare in a minute, but that is something to just remember, that number going up significantly. I'll get to that in a minute. This is a typical slide. Local property taxes going up 2.63%, which is 2.5%. 2.5% for the town of Sutton is $420,000. And that's barely enough to cover the education costs over at the school department. Last year I gave the school department $420-something thousand. That's the 2.5%. That's really our only revenue coming into this budget. New growth, we budgeted 150. Hopefully we can exceed that, but we always tend to budget that conservatively, just in case we don't make that number. But history shows that we will make that number. State aid is going up 0.8%. So total of $50,000. State aid lottery, the UGR account, the unrestricted general government aid, is going up $21,630 net of costs, net of offsets. So a very small amount of money, not much to do anything with. And you can see Chapter 70, which typically goes over to the schools, is $28,000. Local receipts went up $4,000. We're not pushing local receipts this year. So that gives it ultimately your bottom line on your revenue figure. State aid trends, I like to bring this up every year. We've never reached our number of 2009. You don't see this. Let me see if I can. You see that? There you go. 2009, it peaked in Chapter 70 at $5,496,000. What is that? 9 fiscal years later, it's still in real terms less than that amount. So you'll see that on the following slide as well. And lottery aid, same thing. 2 years at $971,000. Now it's $779,000. So in real terms, it hasn't kept up. Again, you see state aid peaked in 2009. Here we are today. It's gone down. It's gone up steadily since 2011. I'll give them that. But it's still less than it was in 2009. So, our costs continue to go up. We're not allowed to take a few years and no increase and then, go up incrementally over time. Our costs are our costs. And during the recession, during this slowdown, we had to cut positions. We eliminated over 20 positions, over 20 teachers in the school department. We really had no alternative. And a number of town employees also saw their hours reduced or positions eliminated. So it's just a little history lesson there. New growth, we budgeted $250,000 last year. It came in at $1,067,000. Most of that, almost all of that new growth was a result of Market 32 and the New England Power that supplied the power to those facilities was all new growth as a result of that. Now we're down to 150. Again, budgeting it conservatively, it's generally come in at the 200,000 area minimum, and then it's gone up as high, it's 300. It's tough because these numbers are more recent than these numbers. So I tend to budget in these numbers, and if it's higher, then that's good news. And if we get more new growth this fall, I will use that new growth to apply it all towards debt reduction to offset our recurring costs. Local receipts have grown steadily, and the recession hurt us a little bit, but ultimately we're doing pretty well. So that's that. This is just a 5-year revenue projection. We did this some time ago, so the numbers aren't exactly accurate, but this number was FY 2017. That's 2.5% plus new growth. We received $1 million in new growth and $420,000 in 2.5. This year, we are budgeting $575,000 in 2.5 plus new growth, and we're budgeting $50,000 in state aid. So the numbers are the same, just a different. This is not local receipts. This is state aid this year. So we're getting $650,000 additional revenue, but our costs are over $800,000. So you can see that doesn't work out long term. Again. 5-year projection shows that we are receiving $650,000 per year. That's 2.5% plus new growth. Our typical expenses are $200,000 plus for health insurance. We don't know what's going to happen under the new administration, and hopefully they make some improvements to that. But those are our healthcare costs that we've been experiencing. School department, $350,000 is the least I've given them over the past few years. But that should allow them to maintain all their positions with their cost of living adjustments and so forth, if you look at the school department budget. Town increases, pension increases. That doesn't take into account Blackstone Vocational School, which is typically unpredictable depending upon how many individuals choose to go to Blackstone Regional. Increased positions, there's no money in there for any of this. So if you add all these recurring costs up, it exceeds $650,000, our recurring revenue. So, unless we cut costs or we receive extra new growth, extra development that's taking place in this town, then ultimately we're being challenged by this. And we may be back into a position of, freezing positions and cutting positions long term. We receive Manchog Library money from rent. Health Department regionalization, Cheryl Rowinski has 10 IMAs out there. She's working hard for that. She gets paid, but we also get $20,000 in revenue from that service. And the SRECs from the solar panels are approximately $80,000 a year in local receipts. Because we paid for them all out of one-time revenues, free cash or typically free cash. So they're all generating revenue for us with no additional cost coming out of our budget. These are just big numbers. The education, 355. I've cut Blackstone. We have 5 fewer students attending Blackstone Vocational School, but you don't know what that final number is going to come out to until sometime in early March when they adopt their budget. But that's the $350,000. We've had additional student attending Norfolk Aggie. Public safety, that's the sergeant's position, which we've created in the budget. We've funded a sergeant's position, but ultimately we didn't fill it for 8 years. So ultimately the amount that we budgeted over 8 years got eaten away by cost of living adjustments within the sergeant's positions. So I've increased that number to reflect what a full-time sergeant would make, as well as adding an additional duty crew member. Public Works, these are nominal 20, small increases in these budgets. Benefits are the real budget buster, almost 12%, which is really difficult to maintain. Pension increases have gone up $50,000, a 5.5% increase. They've agreed that the unfunded liability is paid off in 2035. We'll have to wait and see how that holds up long term. The good news is the market's doing well at this point in time. Hopefully when they do their, what is it called? Their evaluation? No, their actuarial. Hopefully they do that when the market's doing well. But they've also changed their funding formula. Rather than going to an 8% or an 8.25 with different smoothing, kind of artificially raising the rate of return, I think they've gone down to what, 7 or 7.5?
You're at 7.75 this last valuation.
Okay. So that number's coming back to reality, because you don't invest and you get 8.5% every year, because we'd all be wealthy, those of us who invest. But the problem is the market has ups and downs, and right now it's up, but over the next year it could go down, and you make a bogey of 8%. It's very difficult to reach that every year because you have to have a diversified portfolio. Property casualty insurance, This year went up almost 20% last year as a result of our workers' comp and IOD accounts. This year, we've been told workers' comp experience is high. Now, we don't have any municipal or town side employees on workers' comp anymore. We did have a highway employee on workers' comp up until last year. He's since retired from the town. But, we really have to watch our workers' comp experience. And ultimately, you pay for your experience over a 5-year period of time. So after it happens, you continue to pay for that for the next 5 years. It goes down a little bit every year, but it's no different than auto insurance. You get into a car accident, you're going to pay for that for the next 5 years on your premiums. Similar type of situation. Healthcare, cost is unsustainable. We need to adopt a deductible plan. We're looking at a $300 deductible for per incident. An individual is only responsible for $300. For a family, it's a $900 max, but $300 per incident. So if you have outpatient surgery, it's a $300 hit. If somebody else in your family goes to have an operation or something, it's $300 and a max of $900 for a family plan. Open enrollment, we had an additional, I think it's more than 11 individuals opt into our health plan. The cost of this was $100,000 plus. We're now looking at potentially $150,000 since our budget was approved last May. And to me, and I may be the only one that thinks that, but we created an opt-out provision to encourage people to opt out of our insurance. The fact is our insurance is too attractive to opt out of. We don't have deductibles. We have copays. I mean, how many individuals only have copays for their health care? Most people have deductibles. A lot of people are in health savings accounts, HSAs, that are large deductibles, $2,000, $4,000 HSA accounts. So we have this very attractive healthcare budget on a limited budget. It's difficult because you're talking to union employees, some teachers' aides that don't make a lot of money, and they're part of this IAC negotiating group. But the bottom line is, out of 150 that participate in our, I don't know how many people we have in our health plan.
We have 350 enrolled right now.
All right. Well, that's retirees as well.
Retirees are about 100, retirees plus spouses, which could be, husband and wife could both be alive, or it could be just a surviving spouse. That came out to about 125.
All right. So out of all those people, we've had 4 people opt out of our insurance. And it's a pretty lucrative benefit. It's $3,000 we pay every year that you opt out of our health care insurance as a family plan, $1,500 for the individual. But people aren't choosing to opt out because it's too attractive to opt out of it. It's a balancing situation, but ultimately it's becoming cost prohibitive for the town to offer these super benefits to the employees. I think I went the wrong direction. School department capital plan, they're getting $243,000. They're getting $378,000. That's $350 from the town, $28,000 from state aid. We're still pushing the legislature to increase that state aid number, which is $20 per student. Last year they went up to, I think, $50 or $55 per student. It was an election year, so we'll have to see what they do in an off-election year. But we are pushing for that number to go up higher, and I think there's a concerted effort going on out there currently, so hopefully that goes up. And we'll continue to pick up $60,000 in data processing costs. That has worked out great for the town with Dan Durgan and his assistants. It's a great service. Enterprise funds, same as last year. Capital plan is going up $600,000 $696,000 and $696,300. School department's getting $243,000. Police, $79,000. Fire, you guys can read these numbers, $65,000. Waters Farm, we are funding a chimney for Waters Farm. Waters Farm doesn't ask much from us. We give them $750 a year in our budget, and they do most everything else on their own basis, raising money through Waters Farm Days and so forth. But this is an infrastructure improvement that will help Waters Farm, because if they get working chimneys, they may be able to serve meals on those working chimneys, and that will help with them raising funds for that great nonprofit in town. And the town is getting $180,000. The details of that are within your capital plan. I won't go through it. Transfer station, that's an additional container for $7,500. Pigeon Hill Cemetery expansion, $50,000. That's $22,000 for the land acquisition. $28,000 for paving and surveying expenses. And the sewer is looking for a truck replacement. These are all under other financing sources. This is an enterprise, sewer is an enterprise, and Pigeon Hill is coming out of the Cemetery General Care Fund, which currently has a balance of $200,000 in that account. So the town has a solid stabilization, over $2 million at this point in time. We're funding OPEB at, right now we have close to $800,000 in that account. We have a 5-year capital fund funded by the Capital Stabilization Fund and free cash that last year was certified at $1.3 million. The school department is getting closer to having a sustainable budget with good class sizes. The real concern for me, and I think for Tim and the finance team, is we're doing okay this year. I think we'll be okay next year, but it's really, we need to be sustainable for the long term. And any additional savings we can get out of this budget, we need to apply towards debt reduction, which further reduces our recurring expenses at this point in time. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Great job, Jim.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, that was that was really a great update. We've talked for a long time about budgets, and last year was a pretty good budget. This year, to start off the presentation by saying that we have a balanced budget, of course, is a really encouraging thing to be able to say at this stage of the game. But what's really impressive, I think, about your presentation was that you didn't focus on that you really focused on, more of a long-term picture. And, I think you've done an excellent job of kind of framing the picture going forward and what the issues are in the long term. So I really appreciate just the perspective that you put on it. Clearly, between you and Tim, worrying about the next 3 to 5 years, it's the right thing to do, but I think more importantly, in this environment, it's good to be sort of coaching the town around what issues are in front of us. So, I just appreciate the approach that you're taking here. So,
well, we're lucky that this year we had the opportunity to take that approach. In previous years, we didn't. I mean, we were trying to make it work this year.
Sure.
We weren't concerned about next year. That's 12 months away. We're concerned about making the budget work this year. Now we're able to look forward a little bit.
Yeah. Years of hard work to get to this position. So, a couple of questions, if I could ask.
Sure.
You talk about using one-time revenues, free cash kind of thing, to pay off debt, and that will free up money in the future. So we're talking about non-exclusion debt in that case?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay,
Non-exclusion, non-debt exclusion debt.
non-debt exclusion debt,
Right, that's correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's generally, right now, we have, an example is the FY14 capital plan. There's $96,000 in the budget right now. If we put, reduction in costs within this budget, or additional new growth that maybe gets certified in the fall towards that debt, that frees up that $96,000 in FY19 and FY20.
Future cash flows to
Exactly.
pay off that debt. Okay. So we just got the school budget tonight. Have they, where are they in terms of using recurring or non-recurring type revenues?
They're doing pretty well, actually. An example is they had, I don't know what their school choice number last year was, but approximately $350,000. They didn't spend a penny of that money. That was all turned back into the revolving fund. So now they have $700,000 in school choice. And Ted Friend does a great job just kind of managing his budgets, making sure that they don't spend anything that they don't need. So the last revenue they have is school choice by design, because anything that they can hold back on purchasing or cut from their budget, that school choice money goes back into the revolving fund. So that number, which was dwindled down to pretty much nothing in 2014 and 15, is now rebuilding slightly. And then we created the special ed stabilization account for $200,000. That's still there, will remain there, but hopefully the school choice continues to grow as a reserve for the school department.
But at some point, it's fair to be able to use that annually, I guess, in the amount that you think you're going to receive year over year, right?
Exactly. You can budget the receivable and feel comfortable with that.
Yep.
That's the problem with free cash on our side. To budget the receivable, we don't know what we're going to receive in free cash, and we've done a pretty good job with getting free cash certified and limiting our expenses, use of our expenses. We don't have people spend down to the last penny. For the most part, unless you run in the fire department in prior years. But for the most part, departments give back a little bit of money to the town, which helps our free cash position. And, our revenues generally come in better than anticipated. So that's how free cash is created, those two resources. Sorry.
It's good. A couple of more items, just a comment on the police station being in this budget. I think, I guess I only want to speak for myself, but there's been an awful lot of support from this board regarding the police station, and I think it's been a long time coming, and even though, at least in the short run, that's an increase in the budget, for that debt service and to get that built, I think it's a really important thing to have, and it's been a long time coming, so I'm glad to see that it's in there.
Yeah, I agree, and I thank you. One thing we're trying to do, and Tim and I talked about it this morning, is trying to, right now, the middle school, high school brought our debt exclusion debt up to $3.6 million. That's the highest it's been, I think, in some time. And now we've been starting to spend that money down, eliminating some of that debt. By the time we borrow for this project, it'll be down to probably in the $3 million area. So when we borrow, $7 million, which is over a 20-year period, roughly $350 for principal and another $2. So that's probably $600,000, which brings us back to the amount that we were at with the middle school, high school, $3.6 million. Anything more than that creates a concern, but, something to consider.
Yeah, again, certainly from my opinion, this is a project that's been sort of taken a back seat for a long time, and the conditions down at the police station, in my opinion, more than warrant the cost at this time. So again, I'm happy to see it in the budget at this point.
Yeah.
So, and I guess in the same vein, the sergeant's position that has been sort of there but not funded for a long period of time, and things change around town, and I think at some point you just have to sort of pony up and recognize that, we need the support for the work that has to happen. So, again, I'm really interested in the Finance Committee's take on the budget. I'll be happy to hear what they have to say. Look forward to that. And just my last comment is I'm happy to see Matt Stencil branching out. So,
Pun intended.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Jim.
Paul?
I have to continue after that
No, good setup, huh?
one. Jim, 10th year.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
I think most of mine are just basically bullets on what you put together. The first one was currently a balanced budget. That's great. The possibly five students for the Blackstone Valley Tech, that bothers me. That's a great thing for a student to go to that school, to learn, to get a life skill, to get a job
Yeah.
after the trade school that teaches the jobs. Here I am. I went to trade school. I go again.
Yeah. That's a good point, but, what's interesting is last year we had the bubble class, the ninth grade class that went into that, and we had an increase of, I can't recall.
13 or so?
Yeah, it was a big number.
It was high.
So a lot more students are going to Blackstone, but, this year we had a 5-student reduction, but last year I think we had a 15-student increase, so it was a big increase.
And it's just great. Jesse and I were lucky enough to go through it with a couple other people just to see what they're doing and some of the things that we were able to help them with. Just great. Thank you for the code red. I know I've been bugging you for that years,
no.
but that's going to be great, and it's going to tie up with a couple other towns also. Once again, you've thanked all the people for their work, and they have all worked pretty well for you. The FY18 budget, it looks great. There's so many positives. It's just wonderful, and the negatives are low. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any significant questions. I think it was self-explanatory. I think the presentation was wonderful, and ultimately, the numbers speak for themselves. And the fact that we were able to be in this position and things look so good at this point in time, I think that speaks volumes to the work that you've put in, that Tim's put in, and the entire financial team. So thank you for the hard work. And of course, thank you to everyone in town, because it's all the employees, all the departments contributing to make this budget work. So excellent work all around. From my perspective, I really appreciated the long-term view that you put into this. Because again, it's easy to worry about today, but obviously decisions today impact what's going to happen tomorrow. So I like that you're looking ahead, because ultimately it may allow us to be in a position 2-3 years down the road to maybe avoid, some of the dips that may occur, and probably will occur,
Yeah.
realistically speaking. I like the fact that you've avoided over budgeting the new growth, because ultimately that's a potential trap.
Yep.
Because if you count on numbers that don't, materialize, obviously you're going to set yourself up for a deficiency. So thank you for looking at it that way. As far as funding from the state, hey, the state plays all kinds of fun games. They impose all types of unfunded mandates on the municipalities, on the departments, and, they don't have the money always to back it up. So hopefully, it is not an election year, but hopefully they'll see the importance of, funding all the programs that they require us to put through.
Yeah, ultimately, they cut the kindergarten grant from the school department last year. So, really, we got $55 additional per student, net of the loss of the kindergarten grant. So it was really a small increase.
Yeah. So, but again, it looked good. Oh, look at what we're doing. We're
I
throwing
know.
you this money, but they don't talk about the cuts that come from the other areas. So hopefully, I know it's a game, I know it's politics, but hopefully they do the right thing, because ultimately the towns depend upon it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear about the paving going in for Pigeon Hill, because I've actually had some calls from people who've been trying to go up there, and the road isn't necessarily in spectacular
It's
conditions.
difficult.
So obviously it will serve multiple beneficiaries.
Yeah.
The people going to visit their loved ones, but also having the ability to access the tower.
Yeah.
That will be a good thing. Actually do have one minor question.
Sure.
And it's in regards to Code Red. Is that going to be able to contact cell phones, or is it just landlines?
Yes. It does contact cell phones. It does texting.
Okay.
If you, I mean, it really depends upon the residents, how they want to be contacted.
Yep.
If they choose a landline, they can choose a cell phone, they can choose texting. They have a number of different options that they can choose.
So once this program's in place, will the residents be contacted about, what type of number they want to use, or is this something that would be on the census or something along those lines?
No, Code Red does the whole, what is it called? The outreach, or the laying out the program to the residents, and they get people, I don't know how they do it, but they get people to sign up, and how would they like to be contacted?
But like Sutton Power, they'll, chances are, get something in the mail.
Yes, oh yeah, then no question they'll be contacted, because ultimately the system doesn't work if we don't have residents contact.
Right, numbers in it, right?
So that's an important part of it. I just don't know, how exactly that works mechanically.
I'm sure as we get nearer to putting this program online, that we'll have an update in that regard. And the last comment that I have it underlined 4 times, is healthcare.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is a reality that we have to deal with, and I am confident that ultimately the financial team will make the decision that is best for not only the employees, but the town as a whole. So
Yeah.
I don't want to sound sarcastic, but good luck with that one.
No, it's a challenge. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I have no further comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, guys, for putting this together. It was
Sweat.
a great presentation. Just a few questions that actually lead off where Selectman Lemanik had left off is, it's tough. It must be tough because of the fact that it's a Cadillac, like you put up there, a Cadillac on a Chevy budget. Is there plans in place where that's being looked at now to bring that 16%, 14%, 12% down?
Yeah, we're actually proposing, we have an IAC meeting, I think, next week, where we're proposing to adopt 2 plans, a deductible plan for one, which I described in the presentation, but also a limited network plan, which, limits the doctors, the hospitals, and the pharmacies that you can participate in. Now, the good part is most of those Worcester hospitals are included in the limited network. UMass, Memorial, and University are included in that limited network. St. Vincent's is included in that network. What's not included in that network is Mass General, for instance. I think there are a couple of other Boston hospitals that aren't included in that limited network. Dana-Farber is included in that limited network. So it comes down to a consumer decision on the employee side, and they got to figure out whether they use those doctors or hospitals in Boston, or whether they use the regional hospitals. Same with pharmacies. CVS is in the limited network. Walmart is in the limited network. Rite Aid and Walgreens are not in that limited network. So I don't know how they come up with this, but I'm assuming it relates to cost to some extent. Mm-hmm. Either those high-cost hospitals in Boston aren't part of the limited network, and maybe, I can't really comment, but the higher-cost pharmacies, I assume, aren't in that limited network, whereas CVS and Walmart probably produce a reasonable a rate that they're able to participate in that.
Excellent.
So,
I just had thought of that because of the fact that, speaking long-term, with revenue, with spending increasing, outgoing increasing incoming, which is great that we can look at long-term and fix it before we get to the point where, you're not in a situation where it lasts several years where you have to look at 12 months out and that's it.
Right.
Which is good. So it's typically bringing it back down to more of a private sector type health plan, like most of us have. Yeah,
and that's I go before the finance committee next week is my presentation before them, and they all laugh at me at our health plan. because they all have high deductibles, HSAs,
Probably be lynched when I go outside by 350
Well-
people that are on the plan, but
Well,
it's reality.
It is reality,
It's-
and I think, the compliments really go to the Insurance Advisory Committee, and that's made up of all unions in town, as well as the Mass Teachers Association has a rep in that IAC, and they all participate in the discussions, and they realize what we're up against. Not only us, but the individuals themselves. I mean, if they're facing a 13.3% increase in their healthcare premiums, that's a budget buster for them as well. So with some, contribution by the employees, we're able to reduce the impact in the budget.
Excellent. Another question, I noticed that the tree warden being removed. Will Matt also pick up the duties of the contracted tree service that comes out?
No, we'll still fund that for $25,000. It's in the budget under Highway Department now versus the tree warden account.
Okay.
And we, have 750 for Arbor Day celebration, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I essentially, I was able to cut the cost for the tree warden's position, but I transferred most of the line items within their budget over to the Highway Department.
Okay, because that's the increase on that side.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I noticed it. That's good for me. I again, thank you. Now take a peek. I want to see what's going to happen in the future with FinCom on that, on the budget. So
Yeah.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. First, I'd like to say it's nice that you've brought some awareness for the FY 18, 19, 20, 21 look ahead, and we ought to be cautious about that. But I want to go back to this year a little bit. Jim, it's because of you and your financial staff, and I give credit, not to myself, but to this board, for sticking by a lot of the decisions we've had to come up with this year, and to really looking at Sutton being ahead of the curve on a lot of different things. You look at our school department, all built out now, all in one area. That's starting to come down a little bit. The communication that we've never had before between you and Mr. Friend, and that's important for Tim to work with both of those committees and get some direction there. But the new building that we have with the police station that Dave mentioned, certainly that's been a long time. That station was built in 1983, and it was supposed to be good for 20 years. Well, we've certainly outgrown that. And if anyone doesn't know, for the public, we haven't even really got a garage anymore. It's an evidence locker.
Right.
And that's kind of sad. And now bringing on females, their place is very cramped over there. And we really need something more than what it has. And the outlook for that is really good with our committee and to get going with that.
Yeah.
But Jim, a lot of the projects, a lot of the experience that you've brought to this board and to the residents of this town for over the last 10 years, I really applaud you myself for being from a big town, Fall River, Lowell, and then looking to Sutton here, and then other towns wanting to grab you, but we have you here, and that's a good thought. And I know that all my colleagues here, we compliment that. So I would just like to say again, Jim, thank you and all your staff and all the things you've looked out. I mean, to do that 13-town feasibility on the wages and everything, that's not selfishness. That's something, because you have a heart for all your department heads, and you look out to all of them, and within merit, if you can adjust someone, you've done some of that, because you get a lot of that back.
I do.
Even without that,
Tenfold.
the staff that you have, you get a lot back.
Certainly.
Because you're very lucky to have a good staff.
No question.
So, with that, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to go right into Town Administrator's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple quick updates to the board. On the budget update, the Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee will have a meeting next Tuesday night at 6:30. I'll present the budget to them at that point in time. The public hearings will be started on March 16th at 6:30 PM. That's the first of the public hearings, and then the committee will vote to continue those public hearings over a couple of weeks. Police station building project, we've awarded Tecton Architects for the design of the new police station. We are in the process of finalizing that contract. Town council's reviewing it. There will be a tour of the Wilbraham Police Station on March 1st at 1 PM. Police Station Building Committee is invited to attend. At night on March 1st, the Police Station Building Committee will have their meeting and hear a report from a few officers that have toured multiple police stations to give their input on what is required for a new police station. Meals on Wheels, this March would mark the 15th year for Meals, or March for Meals. Tri-Valley prepares the meals at Sutton Senior Center, and they're delivered to 36 seniors in the town of Sutton. If any selectmen are interested in participating this March, for March for Meals campaign during this week, during the week of March 20th through the 24th, you can contact Kristen McCarthy at that email address. There is an email that follows from Kristen McCarthy explaining the whole event, for those of you who haven't done that yet. That's all I have for updates, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the update, Jim. Not a lot of comments tonight. I guess it's a good thing that the building committee for the police station will have the opportunity to sort of tour another station and hear from people with greater insight on some other projects to get some ideas. That's certainly a good thing. I'm sort of excited to have been invited for the Meals on Wheels, and I certainly hope to participate. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Paul?
Thank you. Jim, it's great to have the police officers that are going to work in that station to look. There's another set of eyes from somebody who's not a supervisor or a builder to say, if we had, that's people come up with the good ideas.
Right.
And with the Meals on Wheels, I will be going with Clark Alderman 1 or 2 days delivering.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellent update, as always. I'm going to try to attend the FinCom, because I like sitting in and obviously hearing what they have to say in terms of the overall budgetary process for the town, but obviously, if I can't make that particular meeting, I can see, when you bring the department heads in and they go through their particular sections, and sometimes that's a little more illuminating.
Yeah.
Police station, excellent. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go on the tour, but I look forward to hearing the report from the officers who are able to attend.
Yep.
And I have already signed up as well. Unfortunately, I can't go during that week, but I've reached out to Michelle Saucier, so I will be going the week before.
Good.
And I went last year, and it was excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks for the update, Jim.
Sure.
Just do Meals on Wheels. Yeah, it's an excellent event. I attended last year also, and it's great to help out and get down there.
Yeah.
And but other than that, I think everything was covered. Is the Wilbraham Police Station, is that for the committee alone, or is that open to?
I suppose I don't know how we're gonna get there. To be honest, I mean, I can convey to the board when I get more details. I think we're meeting there at Wilbraham, so I don't know if we're carpooling or a number of people going. I'll email the group to let you know when I get the details.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much open to, the building committee and the selectmen, I suppose, but I don't know the details on those. I apologize for that.
Thanks, Jim.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Can we have announcements?
None from me.
Okay. And Selectmen's Roundtable and correspondence, business topics.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, my colleagues have kind of covered this stuff, but I really would like to just mention a couple other budget items if I could. We talked about health insurance, and we've talked about this before, but, I guess I would just reiterate my support for the Insurance Advisory Committee and the work that you're doing there, and the importance of trying to come to an agreement with the town and the committee, because, as we've stated, this is just not what the real world is like today. And unfortunately, even though it's costly potentially for some employees, it's just where the world is. And I think we just have to push in that direction, because, as you pointed out so aptly in your presentation, the costs are unsustainable, and to find a way to make it sustainable is really important to us. So
Yeah.
I encourage that process. And Jesse, you picked up on the history of funding from the state to the town, and I, if this is the right word, I like that slide, because I think it just points out the philosophy of the state, at least relative to our town. I mean, over the course of a decade, they've continually pushed down the amount of money that we get from the state, while our own costs are going up. And so essentially what they're saying to the taxpayers of Sutton is the burden falls to you. So a greater and greater percentage or share of that cost of running the town has to come directly from taxpayers in town. And that, I don't read that as anything other than philosophy. That's what they want from us.
It is their philosophy, and ultimately, what we've seen over the years, and I think I've addressed this partially in the budget message, is that, a couple years ago, the state was funding, 22% of our budget. Property taxes was funding 69% of our budget. Currently, the town property taxes are funding 71% of our budget. The state is funding 19% of our budget. So the gap widens and it continues to grow, because ultimately our expenses are not keeping up with our revenues. And also part of the philosophy is the Chapter 70 formula. It's a wealth-based formula. And we are relatively wealthy, property value-wise. Here in Sutton, surrounding communities get a lot more in Chapter 70 than the town of Sutton, and in large part due to the amount of wealth that's calculated in the 17, a formula of 17 different factors into it.
Right. So, the point, I think, is that over a period of time, that has a lot of impact on our budget process, and we live in an anti-tax environment, and what that really means to us is a cut in services. We've seen it over the course of the last 5 years with the number of teaching positions in particular that have been cut over time, and that's really where it comes from. So, just pointing it out, I guess.
Yeah, and we could go on, but I would say that the fact that we've reduced those younger members of our teaching staff, school department staff, we now have an older, maybe a little bit less healthy than the younger staff. That also has an impact on our health insurance costs.
Sure.
So everything's intertwined.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Paul.
Nothing, thank you.
Yes,
I think that was well said.
Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, that's a great point that Selectman Hall brought up, is the fact that, to really take that into consideration while negotiating, because of the fact that, it's anti-taxes increase, and it's the burden's on us as a community. So, where couldn't the dollars come from? And it's bringing it back to reality. It's not saying we're going to, or we want to take away benefits. It's bringing it back down to make it so we don't have to do other cuts in the
Right.
future. So
Right.
that was an excellent point. That's it. I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'd like adjournment.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.